at home. In this video, I will be sharing with you the story, A Special Place for Santa. As I told you, boys and girls, in this story we're going to hear about Santa overhearing some people saying that he's taking away the true meaning of Christmas. And so I want you to pay close attention, and we'll talk along the way about how Santa can be a part of the true meaning of Christmas. Okay? So this is A Special Place for Santa, and it's written by Jean Piper. Once upon a time, not very long ago, two women shoppers were talking, obviously very concerned. Buying Christmas gifts for family and friends is one thing, and I'm glad to do it, but I'm afraid that Santa Claus is taking over. He is causing many people to forget the real significance of Christmas. Oh, I agree! After all, it's Jesus' birthday, her friend responded. Now, Santa overhears a lot when he is out making his list of who's been naughty or nice. And much of what he hears goes in one ear and out the other, but this Christmas he couldn't stop thinking about what the women had said. Even while helping the elves load his sleigh on Christmas Eve, those awful words rang in his ears. Could they possibly be right? As he went from house to house delivering toys, Santa couldn't stop worrying. Some people do forget Jesus on Christmas. Could it be Santa's fault? Santa's last stop, as usual, was at a church that had a life-size nativity scene. Remember, the nativity scene is like we have in the window here. It's the manger scene with the stable and Mary and Joseph and Jesus and the shepherds and the wise men, right? So his last stop was at a church that had a life-size nativity. Every year, Santa loved to be the first person to wish Jesus a happy birthday. He always brought a special present for the Christ child. But this year, Santa's footsteps were slow and heavy. He opened the door to the back of the church and he crept into the very last pew. His feet refused to carry him forward to the crib where the figure of the infant Jesus lay. He's feeling bad, isn't he? He hid his present under the pew. He had never felt so drained. A tear rolled down Santa's cheek. Even though children had left him cookies and milk and many loving letters, he still couldn't remember when he had felt so sad and so alone. What's wrong? Giving presents always used to bring so much joy before, Santa said out loud. He sat back and closed his eyes when suddenly he heard a voice calling his name. Santa! Saint Nicholas! Santa quickly wiped his eyes. He didn't want anyone to see him crying.
Who was it? Probably Jesus.
He looked around the church. The voice sounded familiar, but there was no one in sight. Cheer up! It's certainly not your fault that some people forget the significance of this day, the voice continued. Ever since you were born in far-off Turkey, only 300 years after my son Jesus was born, you've done far more than most to spread the true Christmas spirit. Santa could hardly believe his ears. God was actually talking to him. And his voice was warm and loving. He didn't sound angry at all.
Was Jesus?
Put those away, Isaac.
It was God.
Don't ever forget your long and distinguished career, God continued. It all began when at a very young age you were named Bishop of Myra because of your many acts of charity. Santa smiled and suddenly remembered his colorful past. Everyone called me Nicholas then, he recalled, and that's when I first discovered how great it feels to help people in need. And you certainly helped them often, God added. Remember that poor merchant who didn't have enough money to pay for weddings for his 3 young daughters? You secretly threw a bag of gold into each girl's window, thinking that no one would see you. But someone did see you, and for that good deed you were named the patron saint of young, marriageable maidens. The 3 gold balls that hang outside of pawn shops to this day represent those 3 gold bags. Santa chuckled. He'd forgotten about that. You've always loved children, God reminded him. Among many other good deeds, you were credited with rescuing some young boys from a horrible death, and you were named the patron saint of children. That's the title I treasure the most, said Santa. Johnny, stop doing it. Well, don't tell that to the many sailors who pray for you to help when they are threatened with stormy seas and shipwreck. You're the patron saint of them as well. And I'm the patron saint of Russia, too, Santa added proudly. A big smile lit up his face. He certainly had led a busy and exciting life. Churches in many cities are named after me. My feast day, St. Nicholas Day, is December 6th, a very special day for celebrations and gift-giving in many parts of the world. You are known by many names as well, God reminded Santa. From the Germans, you are called Kris Kringle, which literally means Christ child. That's true, but my most popular name is Santa Claus, Santa interrupted. Some say that it comes from the Dutch Sinterklaas, but I think it comes from the way small children say St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas, St. Nicholas, Santa Claus. Santa Claus, St. Nicholas. Santa pulled thoughtfully on his beard, and he looked down at his bright red suit. Red had been his favorite color ever since he wore the red robes of a bishop. But he hadn't been so fat back then. Actually, he only got his round belly for a relatively short time. In 1823, when a friend named Clement Moore wrote the famous poem, The Night Before Christmas, it depicted Santa having a round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. And soon many people were drawing pictures of Santa. The famous political cartoonist Thomas Nast, who created the Republican elephant and the Democratic donkey, was the first one to draw him with a long white beard and round belly. Later, the Coca-Cola Company featured a jolly Santa Claus in their Christmas advertisements, and since then, with the help of television, magazines, and newspapers, the figure of Santa Claus is known everywhere.
Oh.
Even my 1-year-old sees Santa and says, ho, ho, ho.
In Christmas Chronicles, they don't.
Jesus and I want to thank you for helping spread the news about Christmas to every corner of the world, God said softly. Every year you help millions of people, young and old, show how much they love one another. Because of you, people everywhere fill their hearts with joy and love on Jesus' special day. Oh, thank you, God, whispered Santa. He felt better than he had felt for months. His was a very special job after all. Santa jumped up. Next year, he would work even harder, filling hearts with love and joy so they would be ready for the Christ child on Christmas morning. He could hardly wait. The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of the church. It bathed the figure of the infant Jesus and Mary and Joseph in its bright, warm rays. Santa reached under the pew and pulled out the present that he had brought for the Christ child. He knew he would have to hurry if he wanted to be the first person to wish Jesus a happy birthday. He almost ran up the aisle. He took off his hat and he knelt before the infant Jesus. He reverently placed his beautifully wrapped package next to the manger. It was the same present that he had given Jesus every year. But now he knew for sure it was the one present that Jesus wanted most of all. Inside the box was Santa's list of the kind and loving things that people young and old had done for one another during the year. So when Santa's watching you, he knows when you've been naughty or nice. He writes down all the nice things that you do, all the kind and loving actions, and he gives that list to Jesus on Christmas.
What? I didn't know that.
Isn't that amazing? Happy birthday, Santa whispered to Jesus. Please thank your father for making a special place for me in his plan, Seraphina. I promise never to doubt his wisdom again. He smiled lovingly at the figure of the tiny infant. Now no one who comes to church on Christmas and sees Santa kneeling there thinks it's strange at all. They can see that it's a perfect place for Santa Claus to be on Christmas. And some people, the legend says, even insist that the babe in the manger is smiling back at Santa.
So cute.
Go ahead. So boys and girls, I have a question for you now before we finish up. And you don't need to say it out loud, just with a show of hands. How many of you wake up on Christmas morning and sing happy birthday to Jesus? If you do, awesome. If you don't, that's my challenge for you this year.
I do it at night.
In my house, when we wake up in the morning, before my kids are allowed to touch their stockings, before they're allowed to touch their presents, before they're allowed to run down and see if Santa ate the cookies and drank the milk, before they see if the reindeer ate the carrots, before they do anything else, we gather around our nativity scene. We place the baby Jesus in the nativity and we sing happy birthday. It is so important to remember. If it wasn't for Jesus, we wouldn't have Christmas. Is it okay to get excited about giving and receiving and sharing love with each other through presents? Of course that's okay. That makes Jesus happy. But we have to remember that it's Jesus' birthday. That's why we have Christmas. And how awesome that on his birthday we get to give and receive the presents. Okay?
Okay.
So boys and girls at home, I'm going to let you go now. I hope you enjoyed the story. And we will see you again soon. Bye!